Good evening and welcome to the September 15th regular board meeting. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Coates?
Here.
Mrs. Horn?
Here.
Mr. Manley? Mrs. Mooring?
Here.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Here. If you will all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there minutes from the August 1st special board meeting, August 16th special board meeting, August 16th Finance and Facility Committee meeting, August 18th regular board meeting, and August 25th Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting?
So moved.
Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Any changes to the draft minutes at all? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Mr. Gooding. We are on the school community reports and presentations section of the agenda. Before I start calling people up, I know there's at least a few students who I believe are probably here for government credit. At the end of the meeting, if you have your forms, you can bring your forms up for me to sign, and if you don't have your form, an agenda works too, but we'll do that at the end of the meeting. The other thing that I just want to remind everybody who is coming up to the podium, please don't touch the microphone. It's all set and ready for you. I know it's like an instinct to touch it, but it is set up in a way that you don't want to adjust it at all. So first we have our Student Council President, Blake Briel.
Hello, everyone. Last time I stood up here, I stated the Student Council will be working hard this year to ensure that every student at GLHS found their place at the high school, whatever that family may be. I can happily say we have already made motions to accomplish this goal, as on September 7th, we as a Student Council hosted a Den Day activity fair in the gym with over 30 participating groups, aimed at allowing students to, quote, find their pride at the high school. And we have plans to host another in the winter to include any more groups that were not able to participate in the first. On top of this, we have broken into multiple committees in order to prepare for October 15th's homecoming dance, and in order to make the new homeroom schedule at the high school more appealing and engaging to students. However, most of all, our year-long committees and officers have each put together and executed their own plans to accomplish the goals they want to see this year. Imam Muhammad, our Diversity and Inclusion Officer, has led her committee in the creation of a beautiful display in front of the high school library, as well as decorating several bulletin boards at the high school in order to spread awareness about Hispanic Heritage Month and many holidays that students at the high school participate in. Kira Bradshaw, our Social Leadership Officer, has set in motion multiple team building activities in and outside of the school and able to pull together student council to better run and manage the student body and able to represent them in an effective manner. Our wellness officer, Isa Rivera, has used her passion for mental health improvement in order to set up a booth and campaign for suicide awareness during Suicide Awareness Week, and is currently collaborating with multiple other wellness-related groups at the high school in order to make sure that their messages are impactful and palpable to students. Last, but certainly not least, Jocelyn Balluman, our philanthropy officer for the Student Council, has organized multiple community service events for us to participate in, such as things as small as volunteering at a local horse barn, all the way up to beginning a food drive for the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, who is currently at an all-time low for their resources. Myself and 3 other officers who do not have committees of their own have begun the motions to already plan a revised Gahanathon, which will occur in January. Gahanathon, for those who do not know, is our branch of Buckeye-Thon's large fundraiser for pediatric cancer research. And we would like to make it even bigger and better this year in order to get more of the community involved. All in all, I've been pleased to see that our student council has gotten right to work this year, and I'm very pleased in every single one of their work ethic and importance to the student body. I cannot wait to see what great things we accomplish this year, and I hope that the goals that I stated at the last board meeting will continue to come to fruition as I move through the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. That was actually really, I think we all appreciate hearing what all of you are working on, so thank you for that update. Next, from Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation, it says Trish Twig, but I see Diana Bessiano too, so I'm not sure who's coming up or if it's both of you. It's both of you. Yeah. Lucky us. Thank you.
I was wondering if this was going to accommodate both Blake and I as far as height goes, so I'm pleased to see that it works
too.
out. Thanks, Kara, for being our representative the past few months. We're glad to be here at the meeting, and I hope that the school year started out well. You know, when people ask me how things are going and what's new, I have to say I have a new boss, I have a new coworker, I have a new office. For those of you that don't know, I'm here in Clark Hall, so just downstairs in the Welcome Center, so please come and visit us out there. And I just wanted to introduce to you the newest member of the Education Foundation team, Diana Bessignano.
Thank you, Tricia, and thanks everyone for having us. For those of you who may not know me, just a little background. Brian and I, and Brian's in the back there, have been living in Jefferson Township since 2006 when our little Joey was just a couple of months old. Since then, I worked at Middle School West. That's where I came from to take the position with Tricia. To take the position with Tricia, but before that, I had volunteered in the schools and had volunteered for many years with the foundation. So it was a great transition for me, but my goodness, I'm learning so much. And the foundation does quite a bit for our students and staff, so a lot more than I even knew. I have Joey, we have Joey who's at the high school. He's a junior with Burl's son, and we have two older boys that I'm second mom to, Drew and Nick, and I'm mother-in-law to Chelsea. Before Middle School West and back when we were in Indiana and a little bit here, my background is in employment and with an employment company. And so there I did business development, management, and recruiting. So hoping to use those skills here with the foundation. I think we have a little bit. But going forward, so this is kind of what we're doing. This past summer, Tricia worked. I started August 1st. But she worked hard, and she worked really well with our alums, and they had a lot of fun at their reunions this summer. But this past Friday, Tricia and I both got to meet the class of 1972, about 21 of them, and we did a tour with Mr. Tom Gregory throughout the high school, in the Fab Lab, in the music room, out to the stadium. They might have been the last group to have their picture taken at the stadium. And in the broadcast room, of course, Mr. Gregory's old haunt. So they really enjoyed that. They're a wonderful class. And something that they did mention as we're walking through the halls is what's going on with the composite pictures? Why are they missing? So we know we have several missing because of one reason or another. And we know that the custodians are carefully placing them tucked away for future. So I guess as we move forward, something to keep in mind is, what is that? What are we going to do with those? Yes. And I know Mr. Gregory, in talking to the alum, it's just so important to keep our history as we move forward to the future. Okay. Also, what we've been doing this year is the Gear Gardens, which you guys probably know a little bit about that as well. We are meeting with business partners, trying to raise money and trying to figure out how we can make this happen for our students in the Gear program. The Gear students and staff are actually going to be at the Jefferson Township Fall Festival on Saturday, October the 8th from 3 to 5. And there we're going to be selling herb seedlings. We were going to sell pumpkins. However, we need to learn more about deer and pumpkins. So,
We have a big field, and there's a lot of pumpkins, but they've got holes in them.
they have holes and no heads on the sunflowers. But so Tricia's going to tell you a little bit more about what we've been doing.
It's all a learning experience. Another thing that we have coming up is the Monster Dash, which is a 5K run. It's a really fun family event. It's going to be on October 29th in the morning, and it's at Hannah Park, so you can go around the one loop and just do 1 mile, or you can do all 3 miles, but it's great for the little kids because they can just do as much as they want, and then they can head to the playground when they're done. But it's a great place to have an event there. We will have the gear students there, and we will have some other student groups represented as well. We just met today for quite a few hours talking about our mini grant applications. We went through 73 of those, and we have our board meeting next week, but hopefully we will be able to announce that we've approved over $27,000 worth of grants that will go out to the teachers. The mini grants are $500 awards, and it's primarily to support special education, students that are at risk, promote wellness, and then there's also an element in there of curriculum enhancement. So we really enjoy reading all of the ideas that the teachers bring. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And we love being able to support them in the classroom. And I think that's it for now. We have some other events coming up in the fall, but we will keep you posted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both for coming. And Diana, thank you for introducing yourself to all of us. Thanks. Next, from Gahanna Jefferson Education Association, we have Bobby Browning.
Hi, I'm here proudly representing Gahanna Jefferson Education Association, as well as Goshen Lane Elementary. So far as GJA goes, we are currently, it's kind of a quiet period of time right now, taking nominations for any interested membership persons who are interested in running for reps to the Representative Assembly. It's truly vital to OEA and NEA's work as they help kind of determine policy, initiatives, and set the direction for the work that OEA and NEA will do. We'll be having a general membership meeting the 25th, I think, of this month to vote on the proposed memorandums of agreement, as well as updates to our Constitution and bylaws. And then just a little snippet about Goshen Lane. We have, and I don't know her name, a Gahanna administrator has donated a painting to our building. The administrator is not the person who did the painting, but owns the painting. It's called The Hope. It's a very beautiful painting. Represents hope for the future, and that will be that's ours. Will be displayed in our building. Girls on the Run has just begun. We have a team of 4th grade teachers who are working that program with grades 3 through 5 girls in our building. And then, not because we want a bunch of snow days, but Goshen Lane is very excited about the snowplows being out this year, because Goshen Lane student artwork will be painted on Gahanna snowplows. So we're all hoping for snow. Maybe not necessarily enough to cancel school, but enough to at least get the snowplows out. And then I'm going to finish with a special quote from a student, a former student from many years ago, who said that school is like driving a car. Sometimes you just have to stop. Sometimes you have to slow down. But sometimes you just have to keep going. And that student's mom, Kara Coates, her son Evan was the one who said that. And when he said that in my classroom all those years ago, I'm like, Evan Coates, I'm writing that down. I have it laminated. I keep it in my classroom. It travels with me. So you go home and tell him that Mrs. Browning remembers that quote. That's all I have. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Browning. Next, we have an update from Finance and Facility Committee from Mrs. Mooring.
Met on Tuesday, the 13th, and we had 4 items on our agenda. The first was a Phase 2 update from Mark Ogden, and so we got to see some actual pictures on some of the pages that had only had schematic designs before, so that's exciting. The turf is down at the new soccer lacrosse field at Black Lick, which is very exciting. So that all is proceeding. And the elementary schools are just delayed 2 days or 3 days in some cases. So that's really pretty good given the supply chain issues that are going on. And then following that, Jill did a schematic design of the new high school. And so we got to see the final kind of drawings that are being used for the construction document design. So that was really cool. Thank you, Jill. And then secondly, we had Sue Wigging and Jill do a presentation. There are a couple of positions that special ed needs to hire due to new enrollment or just class sizes with students, special ed students in them. So they did a great job of explaining how they go through the process of vetting. Is that position needed? Is there a way to change class composition? All of these things before they come to the board to ask for additional positions. And so that was very informative as well. Thirdly, our treasurer gave our August and year-to-date financial report, and then we did part 1. We're going to do part 2, and so I'm going to try to do a commercial here. It's an interactive activity to understand the macro and some of the micro of school finance and how you build a budget and who are the players and all of the different variables that go into school district financing. And so we got through the revenue part on Tuesday, and then hopefully next month we will hit the expense side of that. So encourage people who would like to learn about school finance to come or to watch Tuesday nights, and you can get the revenue side. And then participate if you want, or watch again next month to get the expense side. So that was finance.
Mrs. Mooring. Next, from Policy and Governance Committee, Mr. Manley.
Hi, everybody. Policy did not meet last month, and this month, and next meeting is going to be October 4th. And that'll be posted on the website prior to that at 6:30. So we'll see you there.
Thank you. Student Learning and Achievement Committee, Mrs. Coates.
Yeah, thank you. Our last meeting was August 25th, and the topic was school counseling and mental health support. It was if those that are watching in the audience, if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to watch it. I knew how much mental health counseling and support we had in our schools, but after that meeting, to see how robust our programming is, it blew me away at every school and grade level. And it was refreshing to see, because it's not one size fits all when you have mental health programming, and it was ROCKS and Hope Squad and Green Dot and many, many more. So it was just an amazing committee meeting that we had. And then coming up, our next one is Wednesday, October 26th. It would have been Thursday, October 27th. We changed the date, so please mark your calendars. And our topic is the state report card and quality profile and a math programming update.
Thanks, Mrs. Coates. I do not have any slips from anyone who wished to address the board during public participation. So if anyone did intend to address the board, the slips to fill out are up at the counter over there, but I don't have any slips from anyone. So I'm going to give it a pause. I don't see anyone moving. I am going to move on then. We are on communication and adoption of the agenda. Are there any recommended changes to the agenda tonight? Okay. If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Mooring,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We are on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Deagle?
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back for a board meeting. Just a few things to report tonight. I'd like to first talk about some internal district celebrations and visits, and then I'll talk a little bit about my work in community outreach. Jill and I just finished attending our very first together PTO and Booster President meeting. We had a lovely meeting with our presidents. We were so happy for the strong attendance. We did just really introductions of one another, and then also Jill shared an update on the Phase 2 progress that we have for all of our projects. I think it was well received, and again, we really enjoyed meeting them. Also, I have just continued to tour our schools and attend athletic events, which makes me really happy. I learned after, how many years have I been in administration? Maybe 11 or 12, that the work of administration is much nicer if you spend time in the buildings on a daily basis and not in your office. And it took me a while to figure that out, but I have now, and I enjoyed watching our first graders writing books. Can you believe that? I enjoyed watching our chorale practice. I've enjoyed learning about volcanoes at Jefferson Elementary. I've just had so much fun, and I was even visiting some physical education classes where I got to interact with the students. So we'll continue to do that. Jill and I both continue to make that a priority. Met with our band boosters as well last week, and it was fun because I was in the high school marching band myself, and I joked with them that I think the topics from 30 years ago are the same today. The concession stand. But I had a lovely visit. I was happy to get to know them, and then I saw many of them a few days later at one of our football games. So I really appreciate their partnership and what they do for our students. We had a fabulous stadium farewell event from last time we were together, and I do want to thank everyone who attended that event and made it successful. I want to echo what GJEF said with the rich history we have in our community. I sense that so deeply, yet we have an eye on the future as well, and not a lot of communities can do both at the same time. So we're really special in that way, and it's one of the things that makes Gahanna great. So to the future, our high school groundbreaking is scheduled for October 20th at 5 p.m. That is before a board meeting as well, so that should be a Thursday, and more information will be coming to our community on that. We are currently interviewing a public information coordinator who will work with Judy. Don't worry, Judy is not going anywhere. It is our intent to add to our communications department so that they can continue to do some outreach, tell our story, hear from our community, engage purposefully in two-way communication so we can continue to hear what we're doing well, what we need to work on, and what we're doing well. So I do look forward to that partnership building when we have our PIC on board. That should be coming here soon. Also, I do want to draw your attention to the high school floor plan presentation that Jill provided to the Facilities and Finance Committee. That is now on our website. So anyone in the community can go on our main page and watch her wonderful tour of our new high school floor plan. Almost done. For community outreach, last week I had a meeting with the YMCA, incredible partners to the school district, much like Columbus Metropolitan Library, who I have met already. And so I had the opportunity to meet Executive Director of the Gahanna branch, Shannon Nolan, Dave Peck from the consulting board, and also Tony Collins, the CEO of the YMCA, and talk about ways we can continue to partnership and help our youth. So I'm very excited that I will be receiving an invitation to the Big Table Conversation this year, where we can talk about how to continue to put our arms around our youth and make sure that they have what they need to be successful. And last, thank you to Mayor Jadwin, who invited me to attend the Big Walnut Country Club Historic Marker Ceremony tomorrow afternoon. I look forward to celebrating again our rich history, particularly for our African American community, during that historic marker ceremony.
Dr. Deagle.
Thank you.
Next, we've got our Assistant Superintendent report, Mrs. Elliott.
Thank you. I have 2 items this evening. On the agenda tonight, we are asking for approval for additional hours for some of our math teachers at the high school for one of the 2 new math courses that we have in our program of studies this year. We did have Jason Bates present on those 2 new courses last December when we shared about the program of studies. I know we got a question specifically about those hours, so I just wanted to highlight that again. Both courses are Algebra 2 replacement courses or equivalents. And so the teachers for both of those courses went through extensive training this summer. Those 2 courses were developed by 2 different entities. The data science was by UCLA, and then the quantitative reasoning was developed through the Ohio Department of Education. And so for that course, which has the motion tonight, there's ongoing PD to support teachers, and so that's what those hours would be for. And then secondly, I just wanted to share, if you didn't already know, Kara mentioned we'll talk more about it at the Student Learning Achievement Committee meeting next month, but today state report cards were released for districts in the state of Ohio. It's a completely new system, so some of you that have either been through our meetings or have watched our meetings, they're usually pretty extensive because they're pretty complicated measures. Well, now it's different. It's new. We've moved away from letter grades. It's a star rating scale now, 1 through 5. So no more letter grades. There are 6 components: achievement, progress, gap closing, early literacy, graduation, and then college, career, workforce, and military readiness. The last one, though, there are no ratings for and won't be ratings for until the 24-25 school year. It's a very robust measure. There are 14 components to it. The others that we're more familiar with are calculated differently. So we'll dive more deeply into those at our Student Learning Achievement Committee meeting. But we did receive 4 stars in achievement, 4 stars in progress, 5 stars in gap closing, 3 stars in early literacy, 4 stars in graduation, and then of course the final one was not reported. And some of them are just tweaks in how they're calculated, and so we'll talk more about it. We have also looked at comparative data across Central Ohio districts, and we're falling right in line and pretty comparable with where we typically perform. In the year 2023, we will have an overall rating. Those are not included in this report card, but that'll be a future measure. So lots more to talk about, but that's just an overview.
Thanks, Mrs. Elliott. Next, we have a treasurer report. Mr. Gooding?
Thank you. And Daphne, thank you for the marketing and sales pitch on the activity. I was on pins and needles seeing how that was going to be explained, but I think it's another tool we have just to talk about school finance because, I understand, and the building project and the pictures. I mean, that's really, really exciting. Financial reports are not exciting. I get it, but we're trying to look at different ways to just communicate how schools are funded, where the money comes from, where the money goes, and we'll get into where it goes next month. We'll continue that. I have stumbled across a couple of other tools that we might use, but I'll save that till a little bit later. But there are 6 items on tonight's agenda for your approval. The first item is the August financial report that was reviewed at the Finance Committee Tuesday. There is an appropriation increase of $779.50. This is for the Hope Squad that the board approved last month. They were doing activity previously. They were doing it under the guidance account. Now we have a new account, so we have to increase one appropriation, move money from the old account to the new account, so you'll see that in the fund transfer, so we get that into the right fund for that program. So that's 2 and 3. Item 4, we received a bill from Columbus City Schools for students that were in a juvenile detention center that we were unaware of. So obviously this invoice is over $3,000, and it's just certifying that the funds were available then and are now. And number 5, obviously, we're always excited to bring forward the donations from our supportive community. You'll see the 5 items listed there. Thank them for their continued support of what we do. And then the last item is the establishment of a student activity account, a district-wide student activity account for the Washington, D.C. trip.
Goody. Oop. I don't know. Is in and out. If there is not an objection to taking those 6 items under financial business together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 6 under letter D?
So moved.
Thanks, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Woo. Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. I don't know. Any additional discussion about these items? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Manley? Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I wonder, do we have too many? I keep trying to turn mine off, but let's see. Under letter D, or E, sorry, there is 1 item for action under educational pupil programs and services. Is there a motion to approve item number 1 under letter E? Thank you, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second?
Second.
Manley, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring? Mrs. Pickle Antonio? Motion carried.
There are 36 items under letter F, Human Resources, which means that our Human Resources staff and everybody else who helps with all these items have been very busy still. Unless there's an objection to taking those 36 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 36 under letter F?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
A second.
Thanks, Mr. Manley. Any discussion about these items?
My microphone,
I'll
but
turn mine off.
again, I see some people that are retiring that have contributed a lot. I know my daughter's had Mr. Fogel, and so we just always want to recognize the years of service of some of these people. And it's sad, but they've earned it. So I have to get over it.
Any additional discussion, questions? Okay, Mr. Gooding,
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Motion carried.
There are 2 items for action under general business. If there's not an objection to taking those items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 and 2 under letter G, general business?
I'll lift.
I think we've got
I'm
a
making a motion here.
from Mr. Manley and a second from Mrs. Coates. Any discussion?
I did want to say with the YWCA agreement, I'm just, ever since my daughter started Kids Place for aftercare, so appreciative of that programming and that partnership and everything that they stand for. They really made a difference and an impact on my daughter. I saw it firsthand with her and her friends. And as a parent, yes, that goes without saying. So, good job.
I'll build on Dion's. Lily and Evan went to Kids Place too and had an amazing experience and built a lot of friendships from there. And even the teachers there we're still friends with to this day. So I'm glad to see that we still have that.
Yep. Ditto from me. Our 3 kids all were Kids Place kids. I don't know know what's going on with this microphone. Wonderful experiences with the teachers. So we very much appreciate the relationship with the district.
And also, just to recap, I love their mission, and they really walk it. They do it. So,
I was just going
Go
to
ahead.
add that I didn't know this, but I learned this year that we've had a partnership with them for 40 years.
Wow. I didn't know that. Wow. It's amazing. Yeah, that is. Anything else? Mr. Good?
Mrs. Coates? Yes. Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We are on board reports and discussions. Is me with a legislative update. So the legislature is still on summer recess, and they are expected to be until after the election. That is a long summer. Nope. They had some as-needed dates scheduled that were canceled. So yeah, they will not be back until after Election Day. And then we will be in for a really quick lame duck session that will be full of all kinds of stuff. But I just want to, I guess, note a couple other things. I'm not going to go in depth in this one, but as has already been mentioned, we have a new state report card system. So I just wanted to mention that because that new state report card system was put in place under House Bill 82. And that was a bill that passed, I think, maybe just last year. And as Mrs. Elliott already explained, it changed report cards from the last iteration that we had. Well, the last 2 years, we have not received any kind of grades or stars or anything like that. But before the last 2 years, districts were receiving letter grades. That was also a new report card model. So this is another iteration of the state report card system. And like I said, it was put in place under House Bill 82. House Bill 110 is a bill that was signed into law. This is just a really random, weird thing, but it was a bill that was signed into law somewhat recently. It contained an amendment to revised code 2915.092, and it appears to remove a school district's ability to conduct raffles. Specifically, the bill removed the term public schools from the list of entities that are authorized to conduct charitable raffles. It doesn't impact booster groups. It doesn't impact support organizations. And I think that's primarily where we have ever had anything like a charitable raffle. But for right now, school districts are not permitted to conduct raffles. OSBA says that it's unclear whether the change was intentional or if it was just a drafting error. So they are in communication with policymakers about the issue and trying to look into the possibility of whether or not future legislation can restore school districts' ability to conduct the raffles. Just one of those weird quirks. The last thing that I'll mention is that the State Board of Education is meeting next week. One of the items on the agenda is, so I guess as part of the State Board of Education meetings, State Board of Education members have a section on the agenda where they are permitted to introduce their own resolutions for consideration. There is a resolution that is going to be introduced by State Board of Education member Brandon Shea that would invalidate federal Title IX protections for schools for LGBTQ plus youth. I sent all of you a copy of the proposed resolution. And I guess, I mean, I have shared that with all of you. My proposal to all of us is that we send a representative to that State Board of Education meeting to speak on behalf of our board in opposition to the resolution. I am willing to do that. I'm able to take time off work to go and do that if that's something that we agree that we want to do. And there are several points that I think are important to make on behalf of our board. And I guess I'll just say what I think, and then we can open it up for a little bit of discussion. Scott, I don't know procedurally if we decide that we are going to send me to go speak on behalf of the board, do we need to have a motion and a vote to do that, or do we, that just something we can discuss and decide to do? Okay. There were so this is the interesting thing. So the Department of Education this summer issued some proposed updated guidance related to Title IX. That proposed guidance is not yet in place because it's going through the procedural, the process that is required when guidance is updated. So in order to come up with the recommended guidance, there were some listening sessions that the U.S. Department of Education did around the country. They also held a public hearing and took input nationally from anybody who wanted to provide that input. Then they put out, as a result of all of those listening sessions and that public hearing, they put out some updated guidance related, or some proposed updated guidance related to Title IX. And that process is that they put that information out publicly. I think there were 60 days that anybody could review that guidance and submit comments. That public comment period actually just closed on the 12th. And so the U.S. Department of Education is currently reviewing those comments, and then they'll be making decisions about what the updated guidance actually ends up looking like. That's where it is in the process. This resolution, though, and like I said, I'm not going to read the resolution that's going to be introduced, but there are a few things that it does that, from my perspective, number one, it seems premature, but number two, it puts local school districts at risk of losing our federal funding for free and reduced lunch, because one of the things that the resolution, if it passes, it would direct the interim state board of education, or the interim state superintendent, to send a letter to all public school districts telling us basically that we can ignore the guidance, we don't have to update any of our policies, and if we do that, we would not receive funding for free and reduced lunch. So that, I guess that is one of the very troubling things about the resolution. My main personal concern with the resolution, well, there's a couple concerns that I have. One, I think that it is a completely inappropriate politicization of issues related to a local school district's ability to serve every single student in our school district. It's a distraction, and I think personally that it's kind of offensive that our state board would spend any time writing a resolution like that, discussing a resolution like that, when our students have such incredible needs right now. And then lastly, from my perspective, the resolution is an attack on students who are transgender. It supports some very troubling legislation that is currently pending in the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate that would require genital exams for student athletes who are accused of being a gender different than what they say that they are. So those are some of the concerns that I have. Like I said, I would propose that, I'm willing to be the one to go and speak to the state board. That meeting is next Tuesday at 8 a.m. I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are, but.
Right. I encourage everyone to read that resolution. I got to the third sentence and I knew exactly what was coming. I got to page 2. I couldn't even finish it. I had to take a break. And, it's filled with misinformation, stereotypes, fear tactics, and a lot of falsification. And it's insulting, degrading, demeaning. I could just go on, but it was no surprise after the first 3 sentences, like I said. To just let this go by, I agree with Burl, and we have to say something. You have to do something. Contact people, and your representatives need to hear from you, and they need testimony, but they're accepting. Yeah, they're still accepting it. So firsthand stories, you could tell your story, and there's a procedure to submit it, and there's different ways you could submit it to make it accessible and comfortable, and that's so important. And reach out, to people that are supportive, and go hand in hand through it together is what I want to say. And yeah, I'll do whatever to show up.
Earl, I would like us to participate in some way. Number one, the State Board of Education should be doing things to improve the experience for every student in a school. And I read this, and like Dion, it is punitive at best, and it's harmful and hurtful, amazing. The words are amazing. And I also have a real problem with the penalty being withholding food, meals, right? Hunger is a problem. And you choose to use as a penalty withholding money for food and feeding kids? I mean, the concept is bad. The penalty is not in the same song as the subject, and it's just a double negative to me. So
Title IX is awesome, and this is tearing apart Title IX. Has a long, great history, and of supporting and affirming everybody.
I agree. I think it'd be great. I'm glad you're available to go, and I support both what Daphne and Dion have said. I think I was very appalled in reading it, very surprised, because there wasn't a lot of empathy, compassion, or research and fact-finding done when it was written.
Agreement, and I'm willing to go with you to be supportive that morning. So I agree with what everybody has said. So.
Thanks, Sue. So if it's okay with everyone, I will draft a statement on behalf of the board. I don't know if there's anyone, only one of you can look at it with me and help edit with me. I think Kara.
I'm happy to.
Once we're done editing, what I will do is I'll send it to all of us. And then if you want to reach back out to me individually, if you have any feedback that you want to give me individually, you can do that. Okay.
Can we post it on our website, on our board page?
Can.
I think we should.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we also put out how to do the outreach and tell stories for the public.
I think
Our
we
student
could
body.
do that from our personal pages. It's really quick, so testimony would need to be submitted by Sunday. I don't know that we can get anything onto the district that fast, but we can share it individually if we want to. Got a report from Eastland Fairfield from Mr. Manley.
Actually, there is no report. I didn't hear back from Matt, so I'm sure next meeting I'll have a double report. Thank you.
just to clarify, the board's representative on the Eastland Fairfield School Board is Matt Campbell. He is finishing out the last year of a 3-year term, I think. And so Mr. Manley receives those reports from Mr. Campbell, and that's what he was referring to, just in case that wasn't clear. The next is Gahanna Parks and Rec. Dr. Deagle, do you have anything for Mr. Lofton?
He attended the meeting, but there is no report.
Okay. Next, liaison.
Doubles in Parks and Rec too, but Saturday night is the Hops and Vines, which is the Parks and Rec Foundation fundraiser. So always a good time, and it raises money, and they give sponsorships for summer camp to a lot of our students, as well as other ways that the foundation supports students and children and families in our district. So I just want to put a plug out for that.
Drink too quickly. Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Anything else from Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation? Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Anything from Insurance Committee? Mrs. Horn?
Yes, we are having our next meeting on Monday, the 19th at 4:30. So I'll have a more update in October.
Any other items from board members? Okay. Is there a motion to go into executive session? One and G. 8. So for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of an employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against an employee, official, licensee, or student, unless the employee, official, licensee, or student requests a public hearing. And the second reason is to consider certain confidential information, including trade secrets, of applicants for certain types of economic development assistance or negotiations with other political subdivisions concerning such applications. Thanks, Mrs. Mooring. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion? For anybody who is here in the audience or here watching, when we go into executive session, we'll be going into a separate room. When we come back out of executive session, we will be coming back into open public session in this room, but the only board action that we'll be taking after executive session is to adjourn the meeting. So you are more than welcome to stay while we're in executive session, but you are also more than welcome to leave. We usually take a real short recess before we actually go into executive session, so that's when I can sign all of our students' forms, and if there's anybody who's here to talk to any of us, we'll be in here for a little while. Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Gooding. It is 7:24 p.m., and after a little break, we will go into executive session. Okay. Here, I can move it back. It is 9:02 PM and we are out of executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make
So
a
moved.
motion.
I think there's a motion from Mr. Manley and a second from Mr. Coates, Mrs. Coates. Oh, I'm tired. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mrs. Coates,
Yes.
Mrs. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is still 9:02 and we're adjourned.
Did you hear that crack?